Savage Sullivan Math here. Today we are looking at writing equations in slope-intercept form by looking at the graph first. So as I'm looking at the graph of my line, I'm noticing one major thing. Remember, we read graphs left to right just like we read a book. And left to right, my graph is going in an upwards motion, so I know that I have a positive slope. Okay, so I know that in slope-intercept form, I'm going to have to calculate the slope, which is my m value, and I'm also going to have to calculate my y-intercept, which is my b value. So I've already talked about how the slope is going to be positive, so let's just figure that out right now. We could figure out what the ordered pairs are for two of our points and throw that into the slope formula, or we could simply just count. Since we're on the graph, we could count the rise and count the run and just figure out the slope that way, because if you recall, slope is just rise over run. So let's just count. I'm going to go between these 2 points right here. If I'm going to calculate my rise, I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3. So my rise is a positive 3. And then my run is going to be 1, 2. And that's a positive 2 because I'm going to the right. So a positive rise of 3 over a positive run of 2 is 3/2. I have to think to myself, can I simplify that fraction at all? No, I can't. You could change that to a mixed number, but it's not really necessary. And it's quite frankly a lot easier just to graph in the future if you have an improper fraction anyway. So I would just leave it as 3/2 if I were you. All right, now we have to figure out the y-intercept. Remember, the y-intercept is where your line will cross the y-axis. Well, my y-axis is this vertical axis right here, and I see my line crossing right there at a value of -2. So now I've figured out the important information. I know that my slope is 3/2 and my y-intercept is a -2. So if I'm going to write my equation in slope-intercept form, I'm just going to plug in those values for m and b. So my final answer is going to be y is equal to 3/2 x minus 2. It shows my slope and it shows my y-intercept. Again, I counted my slope on the graph and I found my y-intercept of where it crossed the y-axis.
Let me give it a shot, Mrs. Sullivan. Well, now we have this line. And just by looking at it, I know that it looks different than Mrs. Sullivan's line because my line is going down. And what do I know about lines that go down? That's right, the slope is negative. So when I want to write an equation in slope-intercept form, I need the slope and the y-intercept. Well, I know that my y-intercept is going to be this point right here because that's where my line touches the y-axis. So because my graph is scaled, this is 5. So that must mean my y-intercept or my b value is 5. Because remember, in the equation y equals mx plus b, the b is the y-intercept. So easy, we have the y-intercept and now we're going to find our slope. Well, I know 2 ways to find slope. I can count it on the graph, or because I have 2 points that are nicely labeled already, I can use slope formula. But because I'm given a graph, I'm just going to go ahead and count. So I'm going to take my 2 points, I'm going to draw a little triangle between them, and I'm going to count my rise and my run. So when I start here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So my run is 4. And because I'm going down now, 1, 2, my rise is -2. So when I think about slope as rise over run, this is going to be -2 over 4. What can I do with the fraction -2 over 4? That's right, I can reduce it. So negative 2/4 reduces to negative 1/2. And we always want to make sure our slope is completely reduced. Now that I have my M and I have my B, my slope and my y-intercept, I can go ahead and put it into slope-intercept form. So my equation is y equals my slope, which is negative 1/2, times x, and my y-intercept is 5. And it's going to be plus 5 because my y-intercept is positive. So this is my equation in slope-intercept form. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe.